will dream about something other than that, that represents it, but that is not that.
Wow.
You see?
So he's trying to symbolize the experience through the dream, which is thinking.
Exactly. And a symbol stands for that is repressed, symbolizes the two serpents, symbolize the parental couple, but they aren't a parental couple, they symbolize, right? In a similar way, the Oedipal conflict symbolizes the drama or the feelings that children have with regards to their parents, but it's a myth. It symbolizes it in a story, right? It symbolizes the desire or the hostile feelings that a child has towards one of the parents in order to stay with the other. But the child wouldn't actually dream, unless the child was psychotic, that he killed his father, or that he copulated with his mother. He may dream of something that would look more like the Oedipal conflict, that something happened, some story, let's say, and actually Bion puts myths and dreams in the same line, in the same category. He says that dreams are our private myths, while myths are universal dreams.
Robert?
Yes. Yes? Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's say a patient is attacking the link with the breast, okay?
Yes.
And some denying, attacking the need of the object or the object. When that patient talks currently in a devalued way about her mother, let's say, that would then be like, not that it's real or not real, but would that be like using stories, lies, to affirm that denial? So it becomes very layered and complicated, complex, I think, in the sense of how people will use these stories that they tell themselves in order to keep away their awareness of the need of the object. Is that how it ends up being? And then as a result, the patient feels low about herself, I guess, because there is no object.
Well, that would be one way. That could be one way of looking at that story. And I think it's interesting what you say, right? That we're always creating stories, vague dreams, right? When a patient comes in and says, "I hate my father," or "I hate my mother," well, that is a story that a story that includes the feelings, not that the patient is lying about that the patient has. That is the patient's myth about his place in the family and the place of his objects for him. He's telling us something about his feelings. Now, that is the tip of the iceberg, let's say, or the conscious layer of feelings and thoughts. Now, we want to know the other side of the story. We say, yes, right? But then, as Jim Rothstein entitled his last book, and at the same time on another level, right, we want to know, yes, what you say is true, you hate your father or you hate your mother, she's awful, etc., etc. Now, at the same time, let's see what is on the other side of this that you're saying, right? What is the other side of it? And the other side of it may be that the devaluing of your mother is your projection onto your mother of your own feeling of incompleteness. Meaning, if you have only a mouth but not a breast that completes it, from your narcissistic point of view, you feel that you have no value, right? You're nothing, you're nobody. And that gets then projected onto the object that offends you, by presenting itself as a valuable object and a complement to your mouth, saying, look, I'm offering you my breast because you have only a mouth and not a breast. Well, for a narcissistic personality, this may be very unbearable, right? Which is another way here of turning around some of what we are more familiar with. We say, for instance, that patients don't bear the need of the therapist. Well, this is true, but why don't they? Because the need of the therapist or the need of the baby for the breast presents the subject with its own incompleteness. Yeah, you need what you don't have. And the fact that you have a need is a testimony of what you don't have.
Okay, so over here I keep seeing unconscious process and conscious process, psychosis, non-psychosis. And how do we develop keeping unconscious? Because in my mind, the psychotic is flooded with unconscious process.
Well, that's very interesting. This deserves perhaps a more extensive response, isn't it? There are several aspects or several conceptions of what is unconscious, right?
Can I say one more thing?
Please.
A patient who wakes up from a dream but isn't awake from the dream, and so they keep experiencing the dream throughout the day, and they really can't tell if they're awake or still asleep.
Yes.
In that sense. So in my mind, their experience is that they're under this barrage of constant fragmentation, but also they're in an unconscious state and no way to think about that. So how is it that we build up, I don't know if that's where the contact barrier comes in, where we begin to differentiate between unconscious experience and consciousness, so that we're not flooded with...
Right. Well, for our purposes, yeah. I mean, it deserves a very, very long answer that will take us a little bit away from the points that I want to make sure that we cover. But I would say, descriptively, such a patient that is flooded by his dreams, even during the day, is prey to his unconscious, can't repress.
Right.
Since neurotic people, or most of us, do repress, right? Our dreams emerge only when we shut off all our senses to the external life and to wakefulness, and then we are in contact with our dreams that come from the unconscious. But then we can repress, so we are not flooded by our unconsciousness, and we have to repress.
And split.
And split, right? Otherwise, I mean, we just couldn't go on living in wakefulness. We would be so flooded by everything that we have inside our minds that learning, living, relating would be impossible. So such a patient is unfortunately conscious of what he should be unconscious. Right? Can't repress. Right? Or split, exactly, right? Well, I say repress because we are thinking here of dreams, right? But what happened to such a patient is that for some reason his psychic apparatus has been damaged. That's why he can't repress. Because repression is part of the psychic apparatus. It's like the walls of the house, right? We can't look into the bathroom because there is a wall. The wall represses whatever anybody does in the bathroom. Well, your unconscious, your repression, your psychic apparatus has as one of its functions repression, that is creating a wall so that not everything comes into your mind, particularly anything that would be very inconvenient to have in mind, right? Now, does that answer part of your question at least?
Thank you.
All right. Now, a couple of things I want to add. A very Bionian line is the difference Bion makes between primitive civilization and primitive catastrophe. and he says that when analyzing the psychotic part of the personality, unlike when analyzing the non-psychotic part of the personality, or when analyzing just the neurosis of a patient, what we run into is a primitive catastrophe. And that is what led me to say that a primitive catastrophe is our infantile psychosis, our constitutional infantile psychosis. That we all have gone through a catastrophe, that is a self-made catastrophe. We all have destroyed, in part of our egos, our ability to learn, our ability to understand, because it was partly unbearable. The extent to which we did that may vary, and the reason why it varies is in part internal. It's the innate foundation that makes us different, just as we have different skins. Some people are very light skins and can have skin cancers, others have a different type of skin and can be in the sun forever. It doesn't affect them. In the same way, our psychic apparatuses are constitutionally different. We are not all the same. Our apparatus are not all the same. Some are more propense to go psychotic, to smash their apparatuses because they can't bear living their lives, and others are tougher, bear frustration better, less death instinct, that makes life easier for them. In addition to that, there are the experiences too. Some had a better environment, a better understanding mother, let's say, and could benefit from that, and others did not have that, and therefore were deprived of something that would have helped them to move along. The primitive catastrophe is the smashing of the apparatus. The primitive and Bion contends that when analyzing the psychotic part of the personality, this is what you get to see, a primitive catastrophe. For instance, the unearthing of Pompeii shows a primitive civilization, not a primitive catastrophe, right? Pompeii was buried under the lava of the Vesuvius, but when they unearthed that, everything stands as it was before this happened, right?
But there was a catastrophe, right?
Well, but the catastrophe didn't happen in the civilization. The civilization was buried by the lava coming from the Vesuvius.
Yeah.
But the civilization can be unearthed as such.
Okay.
This happens in Egypt, for instance. The archaeologists that found the tomb of Tutankhamun that is going to come here, they found a primitive civilization. They're all dead, of course, they're all gone, and they were buried under the sand, the dunes, and so on. But when that was removed, you could see the civilization, incredible civilization. Everything is pretty intact, except that everybody's dead, of course, right? This is different from trying to research the remains of Hiroshima after the atomic bomb. That's a catastrophe. That was a catastrophe. There is no civilization left there. The civilization was smashed, right, to pieces.
So that's just like what you were saying about
So
the
what
vase,
is the,
which can be
what is,
back
sorry,
Say it again. Say it out loud.
It's just like the vase; it can't be put back together again. There's
Exactly.
little cracks. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
If we go now to,
so,
yes, go ahead.
so what is the counterpart psychically of the primitive civilization?
Very good. Now, what do you think?
I thought, well, I'm not sure. I was wondering if you were saying that when the experiences are the ones that are affecting the child, that would be the primitive civilization, but then I